Hi, everybody. My name's Pat, and I'm one of the academic liaison librarians that works at the University of Sydney Library. And in this session, we're actually going to do this is normally a session that we would teach over Zoom, but for this one, we wanted to do a bit of a pre-recording so that it's available for anybody who misses some of our workshops. And what we're going to be doing today is introducing you to Endnote, the application, which is a reference management tool. We're going to be doing on this video Endnote 20. So that's the latest version of Endnote. We've got videos available on our Endnote subject guide for Endnote X9. But because there are a few cosmetic changes with Endnote 20, we thought it'd be a good idea to record this as well for anybody who misses a workshop. So how this is going to work, we're going to go through an overview. So what is Endnote about? We're going to show you how to create an Endnote library, how to add references to that library, how to use the cite while you write function, how to change your style. So if you're using a different referencing style or you're switching from, APA to Harvard or whatever, how you might do that. And how to create groups to manage your research. This is one of two workshops that we run in the library. The other is called Working with Endnote. So after you've completed this one, you might go and check out that video, or you can register for the Working with Endnote workshops. And those go into a few of the more advanced functions with Endnote, such as synchronization and annotating PDFs and that sort of gear. So on the way through, if you notice one of these orange slides, this means it's something really important for you to remember during the session. So these are frequently asked questions that we get asked in the library. So if you see an exclamation mark, just listen up. These are a couple of really useful tips to bear in mind. And where you see a blue slide like this, because we're going to be putting this on YouTube, you might consider just pausing the video and going and trying this out for yourself. So if this is the first time you've used Endnote, when you see a blue slide like this, hit pause, have a practice in the software, and then come back to the video. I'm not going to pause for long in the video when these come up, because obviously you can take care of that yourself. So what is Endnote? It's a piece of software that allows you to collect and store references, including full text PDFs as you do your research. So it's really, really valuable. You're going to be collecting a whole lot of information and sources out there. You don't want to have to remember what they all are and where you've kept your summaries and where you've kept your notes about them. Endnote's a way to pull all that together into one spot. And that also enables this really cool cite while you write function. So when you're writing up, an essay or a chapter, a thesis or an article, you're actually able to use Endnote to cite on your way through. So it'll take care of those references in text and in the reference list as well, and does that formatting for you. If you've set up the sync function in Endnote, which we're not going to show today, but it's available in the advanced workshop, then you can also back up your Endnote library to the cloud, and you can share it with colleagues and collaborators as well, which can be really handy if you're both working together on a research project. And as I mentioned before, it also helps you keep track of research notes and any annotations you make as you read. And one of the cool functions about EndNote, of course, is that you could actually create, for example, an annotated bibliography if you needed to, because it can grab the notes that you've left in your research notes field, and you might see those as annotations. So it's a really, really useful piece of software to build into your research and writing workflow. As far as compatibility goes, EndNote works with Windows and Mac, so you can install it on both of those platforms. We can't install it on other platforms. And with Mac, you'll be needing to, if you've got Catalina, which is a couple of years old now, but if you're using Mac OS Catalina, you will need to have installed EndNote X9.3 or greater. But at the University of Sydney, we've made EndNote 20 available to everybody through ICT. So, and this demonstration is going to be on a Mac using EndNote 20. So if you are installing the latest version, you shouldn't have a problem at all. And by the way, as we're going through, if there is, there's very, very minor differences between Macs and PCs these days on EndNote, but where there are differences, I'll point that out on the way through. Now for installing EndNote, this is something to keep in mind. You'll need to have all Microsoft apps like Word closed during installation. Mac security, so that's so that it can add a plugin to Word so that you can use the cite where you write function. Mac security might initially prevent you from running the installer as well. This is what it does when you've downloaded software from places other than the App Store. So to fix this, just hold the Control key on your keyboard and click on the install file, or right click and then select Open. And this will give you a dialog box allowing you to override that security blocker. Okay, so assuming that you've installed EndNote, and what I might do at this stage is just quickly jump over to Safari, and I'll just quickly show you what the EndNote guide looks like, our EndNote subject guide. So from the library's homepage, we'll just quickly jump to that. Oh yeah. So from the library's homepage, there's two ways you can access our EndNote subject guide. One is using the subject guides link here, or you can go under the study tab and you'll see EndNote just here. And down here is the downloader. So for the University of Sydney staff and students, you're able to download that by going through to ICT and installing. If you're off campus, you'll need to have the university's VPN active in order to do that installer as well. And then we've got setup instructions, collecting references, writing and citing instructions, backing up. For those people conducting systematic reviews, we've actually got a really helpful guide here for that as well. And then the videos here, and you may be watching this here. Anyway, the first thing, so I'll just jump over to the EndNote application. Now, this is what a complete EndNote library looks like. I realize I'm going to show you how to create an EndNote library, just to give you an idea what a populated EndNote library looks like. You've got your references in this middle column here. Down the left-hand column are groups and group sets, and we'll learn more about those a bit later. And on the right-hand column, if you were to select an article, in the right-hand column here, you'll see any attachments. Hey, I've noticed I don't have an attachment on that one. I have to find one. A summary of the article, so the abstract, any information that's in there. And then in this edit tab is where I can actually make changes to the reference if I need to. So I might remove that abstract part because I don't want that there, and click save. So cool. So that's what a populated EndNote library looks like. Just for this session, I'm going to create a new library. So ordinarily, you won't see a window at all when you first launch EndNote on a Mac. On a PC, you'll probably see a big gray empty window with none of this stuff on either side. So all you have to do to create a new library is go to File and select New. And then you can name the library whatever you want. My EndNote library will do. I'm just going to save this to the desktop, and I'm going to call it Demo Library because I already have a library on my computer called my EndNote library. For Mac users, you can use this Save as a Package button, which basically compresses the two files that an EndNote library involves. But just to demonstrate here, I'm just going to save that. And this creates my big empty library. And basically with an EndNote library, you'll notice there are two things, a demo library here. So the .enl, which is your library file, and then a .data folder. So those are the two components of an EndNote library on a Mac or a PC. But with that save as package option on a Mac, you're actually able to kind of compress those into one folder. So this is what an empty EndNote library looks like. So what we need to, and now I'm just going to jump back over to my thing. So it's as simple as that to create a library. When you're storing a library though, something really important to remember here, it needs to be stored on a local drive, not on a cloud service like Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive. And even network drives can be a bit problematic if there's an issue connecting. If there's some reason the computer can't connect to the network, it might corrupt your EndNote library. So what we really recommend you do is store it on a local drive. So that's a C drive on your PC. Or just the hard drive itself, the local library on a Mac. And then if you want to back it up to the cloud, just use EndNote's built-in sync function and set that one up. So what I'll get you to do now is to just pause this video and practice creating a library. So you just need to open EndNote, select the file menu, select New, name your library, and save it somewhere on your local drive. Okay, so hopefully you've had a crack at doing that now. And what we're going to do is look at adding a few references to your library. So any item at all can be added as a reference in your EndNote library if you manually add the information. And this can often happen if you're dealing with websites, newspaper articles, depending where you're getting them from. Often if you're dealing with a book, if you've got a physical book, or government reports or grey literature, all of these things will need to be manually added to your EndNote library. However, for most references, when you're dealing with academic research, so peer-reviewed journal articles, for example, and things we get from academic databases, the fastest way to add them is to export them from the database as an RIS file. So this is a standard file used across many reference softwares. So I'm going to demonstrate both of those for you. The first thing I'll show you is how to manually add a reference. So to do that, we'll just jump over to my EndNote library here and close down Teams. So the way to add a reference is super simple. We just go to I can just tap on this button here, which is add a new reference to the selected group. Now I've currently got all reference fields selected, so I'm just going to tap that. And what this does is pops up my little reference window, which is super helpful. That's where I'm going to put in all the detail. So at the top of this window here, you can see I can select a source type. This is really important because this is how Endnote decides how it's going to format the thing that you're adding to your Endnote library. So I might just say I'm adding a book here. Then I need to add the author's name to the field. So I'm just going to put Pat Norman, my name. Now, there are a number of ways you can put in the author name in that field. You can put Pat Norman like that. You can put Norman, comma, Pat. If there are multiple authors in that thing, you can press enter and add a second line for each author in that thing. So here I'm just going to go Roald Dahl, and that's another author. And if you've got a corporate author, for example, if the University of Sydney was one of the authors, you might put University of Sydney and then a comma at the end of that, which basically says to EndNote, this whole thing here, the application actually sees it as a surname, but it says this whole thing here is the name of the author. So treat it as University of Sydney. That's how you want it to appear. If I were to not have a comma there, it would format this as Sydney University of, as though that was the first name and that was the surname. So really important when you're dealing with corporate authors, so organizational authors, put the whole name and then a comma at the end. But for individuals, you can have first name, last name, or last name with a comma and then their first name. And each author on a new line. So I'm going to add the year. And then any of the details that I need to have in here. Etc, etc. So you can see there's a whole bunch of detail. It's important to know your referencing style, so how much information is necessary here. So I'm just going to stop there. And then all I have to do is click that close, and that saves it into the EndNote library. And down the bottom on the right here, you can actually see a preview of that formatted for APA 7th. So you can see I've got surname, and first initial, and then a full organization name there. And if I were to change that style to say Harvard, it will change the formatting depending on my version of Harvard style. So that's how you add a reference manually to your EndNote library. Super straightforward. As I mentioned, corporate authors, really interesting situation there is that you've got to have the comma at the end of the name in full in order for EndNote to recognize that as a corporate author. So what I'll get you to do now is pause this video and then manually add a reference. So you need to go to EndNote and click the new reference button. So you can get that from the references menu at the very top of EndNote, or you can just click that little clipboard, enter the bibliographic details. You can use your own name if you like, and then click close and confirm the save option. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is how to import a reference from a database. And this is something that you're going to be doing most of the time when you're using, when you're doing academic research, because you'll be going through our academic databases to find peer-reviewed research. So to do this, I'm going to jump over to the library website, and I'm going to navigate straight to one of our databases directly. So you can do this from library search, but I'll show you the database first, and then I'll show you the exception in library search because it's a little bit more complicated in library search, annoyingly. So the database I'm going to go to is Scopus. It's a nice big generalist database that everybody knows, or it's kind of useful to a lot of people. So jump into Scopus here, log in. Yeah. Never-ending authentications. So I'm just going to do a quick search in here. Let's go, it's the end of 2020. It's our old mate, COVID-19. Why not? So what we've got here, 238,000 results. And let's say I found these first 3 articles really, really relevant. So I can actually tick those boxes. It doesn't matter. It'll look a little bit different in each different database. But the key thing you want is this export button here. So some databases, it might be called like save references. It might be called export. you can play around and click. You're not going to break anything by doing it, but in this case, I'm going to click export. And what I'm looking for is this RIS format. And see how it even says Endnote underneath it in Scopus. So I'm going to tick that box. I want RIS format. I want all this citation information. Sometimes I like a little bit extra, like the abstract keywords and all that sort of information, like more in my Endnote library. So that's what I'd like to export in this RIS, and I click export. And what that does is generates a RIS file of these 4 references. And it's simple as, to open this in Endnote, it's as simple as going to my downloads folder and clicking that, and it imports all of those references into my Endnote library. Super easy. And there are other ways of importing references. You can go up to your file menu here and click import. And that's one way of also selecting a number of RIS files if you need to. You can also import PDFs and folders. We show you more of that in the advanced workshop. But it's as simple as that to import things into your Endnote library. And now you can see down the bottom here, I've got those summarized readings, those reference readings down the bottom there. To do it from library search, the process looks a little bit different. And as I said, it kind of looks different in every database. But let's look up COVID-19 and business, just so we can get some variety in our readings. So this is our library search result here. We've got, we might be interested in this top one, top article. So the way we can access this is if we click on that, you'll notice that we have a Endnote RIS option here. So once again, we're looking for that RIS option. There's an extra step when we're exporting something from library search, and that's this encoding section. All you need to do is just tap the drop-down box and select UTF-8, or just the first option. Hit download. It'll download your RIS file, and then the first time you open it in Endnote, it will ask you it'll bring up a dialog box saying what filter do you want to use. It's not going to do it now because it's already set up on mine. All you have to do is search for RIS, and it's going to give you what's called RefMan RIS filter. I'll type it up the top here. Is how it will appear in that box. So there's our RIS word again. And basically, you only have to do that once, and you're telling Endnote RIS files this type of file should be opened in Endnote. So that's imported that. And what you'll notice in my all references window is I now have 6 references in my Endnote library. So it's starting to build up. Pretty cool. Now, sometimes you'll run into the issue with both Macs and PCs where the file association won't be set on your computer. So your computer won't automatically understand that RIS files belong to Endnote. In those cases, you just need to tell which program to use to open it. In our Endnote subject guide, we've got a guide to doing that on a Mac and a guide to doing it on a PC. But generally, it's just a matter of right-clicking it and saying like open with, and then telling it to do that regularly, open the same thing. So what I'll get you to do now is pause the video and practice importing a reference. So open your favorite database. If you're a super library geek like me, it might be something like Taylor and Francis, and find an article. Then identify the location of an RIS download. Download the file and then open it in Endnote. So something really important to remember when you're exporting from databases, especially a tool like Google Scholar, because Google Scholar has the ability to export RIS files. Underneath any Google Scholar result, you'll see a little cite button and you can export to RIS. But you've got to remember to check the quality of the information that's going into your Endnote library, because Endnote doesn't really have the ability to clean that up for you. So if there's a name misspelled or something's capitalized that shouldn't be, Endnote won't know to correct that. You'll need to or if there's details missing from a reference, it doesn't know to correct that. So it'll just try to format the reference with whatever information it's been given. Now in reputable library databases like Taylor and Francis or Scopus or Web of Science or these places, it's generally not a problem. But if you're using something like Google Scholar, which uses algorithms to generate these references, it's a good idea to check it just quickly before you move on. So after you've imported it. So now that we have a few references in our Endnote library, we can jump over to Cite While You Write. So this is where we can actually use those references to format our reference list. So now I'm going to go to a Word document that I opened up earlier. And what you'll notice in Word after you've started using it, I'm just going to hide those Zoom tools. you've got this Endnote 20 menu at the very top of Word. So this is how you, once you've got that plugin installed in Word, this is how you control your Endnote library from within Word. It's really, really handy for academics out there who are interested in, who are writing a journal article, for example. You can use this manuscript matcher tool. We talk about this in the experienced workshop. Basically, clicking that will recommend a couple of journals that you might consider submitting your article to. It's really, really handy. But for just the sake of writing an essay or getting started here, we might just type a sentence. And all you need to do to add a reference to this essay that you started writing is click this Insert Citation button. And what this does is pops up a search box here. So I'm just going to search for COVID-19. Going to take time because I've got a very large library open and I've also got this new library open. And I might think that this is the one that I want included. It's actually searching across both of my EndNote libraries, not just the one we just opened. So, but I'm just going to click Insert. And what that does is paste that reference into my text here using APA 7th. Now, it won't automatically drop my reference list to a new page. If that's something that I want, I'll need to go to Insert and just put a page break in there. So for most referencing styles, references should be on a new page. So I'm just going to do that. So you see I've got my reference list and I've got my citation in there. Now, if I write a second sentence, I can go to my EndNote menu and hit Insert Citation. I apologize for my computer being really slow. There we go. And I might just use this first one here. But if I wanted to use several references, for example, I can just Control click. So I just hit Control click or Command click on a Mac and then hit Insert. And what it will do is format those citations in brackets like that. And it populates my reference list. So really, really easy. If I wanted to use an in-text citation using the name of an author, I can go Insert Citation. So this is what we might call a narrative citation, where you're using the author's name in the sentence. We just have to wait for it to load again. I promise you it's faster than this normally. It's just that my computer is sleepy. It's nearly the end of the year. So let's go. Oh, hey, here's one that I wrote. I'm going to insert this, but I can tap that drop-down box and say Insert and Display as Author Year. So this sentence featuring Norman 2020. So I've got my narrative citation here. I've got my regular in-text citations here, and EndNote keeps updating my reference list at the end there. If I need to remove a reference from my from this, for example, I just right-click, then go to Edit Citation and select More, and then I might just remove this reference and hit OK. It'll update the whole document and it removes that from the reference list. So this is a really great way of staying across all the references in your EndNote library. So keeping in your essay and making sure both your in-text references and your reference list are formatted correctly, and any references you've used are reflected in both. If you're using a footnoted style like Chicago, it's really important to first add the footnote, then use Cite While You Write to insert the reference. So EndNote won't automatically do the footnotes. You'll need to insert a footnote and then add the reference itself. So pause the video and practice adding a citation. Create a new Word document, type out a sentence, then go to the EndNote menu and select Insert Citation. Search for one of the citations you've just added and add it to the document. Now, I mentioned before page breaks. EndNote adds the reference list to the bottom of the document, just on the same page. So if your style requires your reference list to be on a new page, it's a really good idea to add that page break yourself and then put the reference list or bibliography title at the end there. Now, in some cases, you might only want to just copy a ton of references. You don't actually need the in-text citations. This is really straightforward. So if you just want to copy the reference list only, it's a simple matter of highlighting any of the references that are going to be in that list, then right-click and hit Copy Formatted Reference. And then if I jump over to my Word document here, I'm going to create a new document for this one because I don't want to interfere with that. All I have to do is paste that in. And then that's created that formatted reference list for me. So creating a fully formatted reference list is super straightforward. Now, if you need to change the referencing style at some point, and if you've added references using Cite While You Write, Endnote gives you the ability to completely change the referencing style. Most styles come pre-installed, but sometimes you might have some, like for law students, AGLC, you might need to install that separately, and we've got instructions for doing that in our Endnote subject guide. But changing the referencing style is as simple as in the Word document, just go to the top of the page here in your Endnote menu, and I might change that from APA 7th to APA 6th. So what it'll do is go through and automatically reformat. Really straightforward. So what I'll get you to do now is pause this video, go to the Endnote menu in Word in the document just created, select the Style dropdown, and choose a new style. One thing I will say about changing style before I get into the folder locations thing, if you are changing from an in-text style like APA to a footnoted style like Chicago, you're going to have to manually go through and make those changes at each reference. So it's really important when you're writing something that you know whether or not you're using a footnoted style or an in-text style before you start writing. Because of the fact that Endnote doesn't do the footnoting for you, it won't automatically update from APA to Chicago or Chicago back to APA. You're going to need to manually do that process. Now, just something to be aware of, because we do get this question from time to time. If you're downloading a new style or a filter, filters are like that RefMan Riz thing that I mentioned at the start when you download something from Library Search. It's very rare that people need to download these anymore, but if you do have to download a new one, there's a special folder in your Documents folder that's both on a PC and a Mac that you might need to point Endnote towards. And so to go to the Preferences menu in Endnote on a Mac, to get to the Preferences menu, you just go to Endnote 20 and select Preferences, and that's what this menu looks like. On a PC, you'll find the Preferences menu under the Edit menu at the top of the page here. But the folder locations, it's just a matter of if these aren't, most of the time they point to the right place, but sometimes Endnote will say, if you're saving a new style, can't find the folder, you just have to point it to the correct file path on your computer. It's extremely rare that that comes up anymore, but just so you are aware. One more thing that I think is really important when you're adding references to your Endnote library as well is attaching PDFs. Now, what I'm going to show you today is how to attach a PDF that you've downloaded from, like just to manually attach it to a reference you've already added to your Endnote library. But in the Experienced Users Workshop, we actually have a number of other ways of adding PDFs to your Endnote library. So to attach a PDF, the bog standard way, you just find the PDF and download it. I usually download these on the way through while I'm doing my research. And then, which paper was this? Adventure, Travel and Tourism. Then it's just a matter of click and drag out of your downloads folder or wherever onto that reference in your Endnote library and see how it's added that little paperclip there. That means that there's an attachment on this reference. So you can see up the top here, attach PDF. And if I click that, I'll get a preview of the PDF on the right hand side. So that's pretty cool. Attaching a PDF is extremely straightforward in Endnote. You can import PDFs in bulk, and if they've got a digital object identifier in there, so a DOI in their metadata, it will automatically populate that reference. But we don't generally show that in this workshop. We'll show you in the Experienced workshop. Endnote also has a find full text function. So if you've got references in your Endnote library, you can right click them and use find full text. And what it will do is search across our databases for the full text article and import that into the Endnote library. You can import PDF, as I mentioned, where it scans the DOI metadata. So instead of importing a RIS file, you're just importing a PDF directly. So if the PDF is correctly set up, it's able to populate that Endnote reference. You can import a whole folder of PDFs, and it will scan the metadata of that whole folder. And what I've just showed you is the attach it PDF, which is the tried and true one that will work 100% of the time. Whereas with Find Full Text, it probably only works 60 to 70% of the time, depending on the discipline. And importing PDFs and importing folders generally works, but with some older articles, it won't work because that metadata isn't there. And also, if you're dealing with a PDF that is, say, a government report, it won't have a DOI at all, so it won't import properly. So I've showed you how to attach a PDF because that's the most reliable. In the Experienced Users Workshop, we'll go into those other options as well. So take a moment, pause this video, download a PDF for one of the references you imported, and then click and drag that PDF onto the corresponding EndNote entry. So one of the questions we get quite often is what happens if people are working with multiple projects? And that happens quite a bit. We don't think it's a good idea to create a separate EndNote library for each project. There are some limited situations where you might be working with a research group, for example, on a systematic review, where that makes sense. But if it's just your regular EndNote library and you might be working on a paper or a chapter or a particular research project with someone, and then you've got other interests as well, but they kind of overlap. The easiest way to manage all of this research is to use EndNote's groups and group sets. Now the language here can be a little bit confusing. Groups is that base level of like a group, and you put a whole bunch of references into a group in EndNote. Group sets is a collection of groups, so it's kind of a folder, I suppose, a higher level group. So you might name a group set for a research topic, and then within that group set you have groups for particular chapters or articles. So I'll give you a demonstration of how to create a group set and a group in our demo library here. So it's as simple as going up to, I need to move this light so I can see what's going on, to the groups menu up here. And I'm going to click, I can either create group set or create a group. So I'm going to create a group set to start off with. So you see over the side here, it's created this new group set, and I might name this COVID-19. And then within that group, I can right click and hit, within that group set, I can right click and hit create group. And this new group might be a group about tourism. To add references to that group, it's just a matter of clicking and dragging the reference into that group. Up the top here, you'll see unfiled. This unfiled folder basically contains any references that haven't been put in a group yet. And all references is every reference in your EndNote library. So you see here, we've got this tourism article. It's no longer in unfiled because it's been put in there, but it's still in the all references. So that's how you can manage groups, different projects using group sets and groups. So what I'll get you to do now is pause this video, go to your EndNote library, select groups, then select create a group and name your group, and then just click and drag a reference into that group just to get some practice working with groups. Okay, so one thing about closing EndNote when you're ready to leave the program, make sure you're closing the program itself and not the library. So on a PC, you'll be closing the X you would normally use to close a window, which might be, I think, on the top right. On a Mac, it's that little red button on the top left. Closing your library can confuse EndNote the next time you open it or seek to import a reference. So I'll show you what I mean. On a Mac, it's this little X up in the corner here on the top left. If I click that, you'll see the EndNote program is still open. I've got this other library here, obviously. If I were to close both of these, I'd have EndNote open, but no library open, and that would confuse the computer next time I tried to import an article. So the easiest thing to do is on a Mac is just to quit EndNote completely using Command Q. On a PC, you'll see a smaller X for the window itself and then a larger X for the program. Just close out of the whole program. And that way, next time you open up EndNote, it'll launch straight into your most recent EndNote library. And another question that we get asked quite often is, should you update your software when you get prompted to update your software? The short answer is yes, because EndNote releases bug fixes with each update. So that's especially important on those incremental updates from, EndNote 20.1, 20.2. A major software release like EndNote X9 to X20, to EndNote 20, where you'll need to download the software again from the university's ICT page, it's probably a good idea to just quickly check the EndNote subject guide, because if there are any problems or compatibility issues with EndNote, we'll have announced them on that guide, and we'll delay releasing the software if we need to. And that happened, for example, with moving from X8 to X9, where people had Catalina. We needed to make sure that people were able to use EndNote on that new system, so we held back the release for the Mac OS version until it was updated enough. So the things that we've covered in this session, how to download, install, and create. So downloading EndNote, installing EndNote, and creating a library. So go to the library's subject guide to download and install it and create a library. Adding a reference manually or importing one, we've had a look at. So adding a reference, for example, a book or a government paper that you've encountered, and also how to import one from a database, looking for that RIS file. Citing while you write in a Word document, so how we can change the style of the referencing as well, because we've been using Cite While You Write on the way through. We can add our references, we populate the reference list, and then we can update the style if we need to. How to attach a PDF, really important, and using groups and group sets to manage your research projects. So if you need any more help, go to the library website, sydney.edu.au/library, and visit the EndNote subject guide. It's available under the study tab. And we'd really like your feedback on this workshop. So you can scan that QR code or visit that link on the page and leave us any feedback that you've got. If there are things you'd like to see covered, maybe other things that you'd like us to produce for you to help with EndNote, your feedback is really, really helpful. And that's everything. Thank you very much for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your study.